Welcome back to another weekly Forex forecast, traders. As always, we will start with the DXY and make sure you stay tuned for the S&P 500 and the Bitcoin forecast. I recently added these two markets in last week and I'm excited to go over them again. As always, we will start with the dollar, and on the DXY, we reacted off of this weekly demand for a second time. I called out this touch here. I was a little surprised to see another strong, aggressive move out of this demand zone, but at the same time, I wasn't, because I was talking about how this is an overall monthly area of demand. You can see these dotted lines, that represents monthly demand. So monthly demand is in control right now on the dollar, which is why I think we have seen both of the reactions off of this weekly area of demand. However, we cannot deny the weakness we have seen in the dollar this past week, and that weakness was really shown on this daily time frame. You can see we had this daily downward trend line here. The daily downward trend line was broken pretty cleanly, in my opinion. I thought at that point we would be pushing up to the supply level at 99.80. Doesn't look like we are going to be pulling up to that supply zone just yet. It is still possible, and actually we did create some sort of liquidity here. So in my opinion, if we do push up to this supply zone again and react, or sorry, up to this resistance area again and react off of it, in my opinion, that will make that supply zone above even higher odds for a move off of it. You will see later we caught a similar looking trade on the USDCAD, so make sure you stay tuned for that. So to me, what we saw here was simply just a trend line fake out, meaning people probably were shorting this trend line on the dollar, and then boom, we spiked above, stopped everybody out, and now we continue to pull down. We are approaching a very tested area of demand, so I'm not putting much weight on that demand zone. So for now, what are we going to look at on the dollar? Well, on the 4-hour time frame, we have a very clean 4-hour downward trend right now. So it's looking very, very weak. We do have a very old 4-hour demand zone down here. I don't really put a lot of weight on it unless we can react off of this liquidity trap here, proving to us that there's liquidity here. Then I think this demand zone could be good for a quick trade. But I will not deny that it is looking pretty weak right now on the dollar. To me, the only real bullish sign that I'm going to see is going to be on this 1-hour chart. Something like this. If we can get a nice push up, a clear pivot low, higher high, a very nice trend line here, if we can get that, then I will be bullish for on the dollar as long as this 1-hour trend line is holding. But for now, we cannot deny the weakness that we are seeing. Yes, we have seen some strength in the last day or two. So we have seen some strength. It's a little bit tricky right now, but honestly, all signs really are pointing to the downside right now on the DXY and the US dollar. On to the forecast for the Euro USD. Obviously, the overall trend is up on the weekly time frame here. However, we cannot deny that in this sequence of time, the Euro really hasn't been doing a whole lot. As we've kind of just been basing out here. If we do pull all the way down to this demand zone, I think it's a great opportunity for a long trade. Obviously, that's months and months ahead here. On the daily time frame, obviously the opposite of the dollar, we look like some sort of trend line fake out here as we continue to push up to the supply zone. It's already tested, so I'm definitely not expecting to see another massive move off the zone. I think we could see maybe a small move before we end up breaking it. That is kind of what I'm thinking. Even if we do get a pullback down to this daily demand, I think it's a great opportunity for a potential long trade. And obviously we want to see some sort of reaction off this liquidity area first, proving to us that there are stop losses here. In my opinion, that would make that demand zone even higher odds. But how do we go about and trade the euro right now? Well, honestly, I would probably be holding off for one thing, and that would basically be for this high to be removed. If we can remove this high, this is a good enough pivot point for me here to consider this a trend line, and that is going to be a very sustainable trend. Yeah, could you be getting in long now? Sure, I don't really blame you for wanting to get in long on the euro if you are bullish, guys. It's just, in my opinion, I like when we have a trend line like this, because that trend line kind of becomes our guide of where price is going to be going. And then once the trend line breaks, we simply get out of our positions if we're in profit, or we get out of our positions if we are in a loss. So that's why I much prefer that trend line to kind of be our guide. And if we continue to pull down, we have a pretty decent 4-hour demand zone down below. It is a pretty obvious one down below at 115. It did remove this trend line in my opinion. So if we get a pullback down there, I think we could see a move off the zone. It's a little bit difficult to tell, how big of a move we're going to get off this zone. It is tricky. Like I said, we don't really have a daily trend anymore. A little bit tricky. So if you want to get along at this zone, I would maybe look for like a 2-to-1 max, or maybe at 2-to-1, look to take 75% of your trade off, something like that. So that would be our demand zone pullback, and all short trades, profit margin is down to that demand zone, again, where we can then switch to a potential long trade on the euro US dollar. Alrighty, on to the forecast for gold. Absolutely on a tear lately. 4-chart layout here. You can see my weekly time frame here and my daily time frame. I mean, this thing is just on an absolute tear. There's pretty much no signs of this pulling back at all right now. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. We did get a kind of a sign over here on Friday here, which we can discuss in a bit. But even if we do get a pullback, we have a ton of daily zones here. So really tricky. Not my favorite situation when we're at all-time highs. Honestly, I much prefer this zone out of any one of these three. In my opinion, this one's not bad. And none of these zones are really that great, if I'm being honest. So if we do get a pullback, that would be like a deeper pullback. I think we definitely will hesitate around 40.23. I think that's where we could see, if we do get this deeper pullback, that's where I think we could kind of turn around at before we push up to all-time highs again. So that is just one potential here on the daily time frame. As far as zones go, I'll be honest with you guys, there's really not a whole lot going on. We had a nice 1-hour trend line here. It was looking really strong, and then we ended up blasting through it here on Friday with a very red day on gold. But that's fine. That is expected. So now the question is this just some sort of fake out to the upside? Unfortunately, I don't have any zones here. I know that might sound crazy, but I don't force zones. I don't just change the way I trade just for the sake of the YouTube video. So I hope you guys respect that and understand that. So 4-hour trend line, though, is still holding. So in theory, longs are still good, in my opinion, on a 15-minute time frame, as long as this trend line's holding. It's a good point to get in long, right? Because we are kind of near the trend line. Yeah, I'd prefer to get in long around the trend line. That's just preferred, obviously. But as long as this trend line's holding, guys, it's going to be longs all the way. We do have a demand zone down below, but you notice how it's just not really noticeable. And that's what I've noticed here on gold. There's been nothing really going on except for nice trends to the upside. The time to buy gold was all the way down here, and then this is a great time to be riding up price. So for now, there really isn't a whole lot going on gold. If you are a day trader, longs are definitely preferred, right? With the trends to the upside. If you're going to trade gold at all, I just think longs are preferred on any time frame, really. Day trading longs, I think, are the best right now due to the 4-hour trend. But again, it's longs all the way on gold. If we can create some new 1-hour zones, that'd be great. But again, I'm not seeing anything, and that's the reality right now. What I'm hoping is we can get a pullback all the way down to daily demand and get a nice confirmation trade on the 1-hour time frame and get a nice long trade. That's what I'm hoping for. But for now, it is day trading longs all the way. Moving on to the forecast for the S&P 500. This is one of the ones we added last week. So let me know in the comments down below if you are excited about me adding this into the forecast every single week. And would appreciate a like on this video if you're enjoying the video so far, and subscribe if you are new to the channel so you can catch my S&P 500 forecast every single week. So everybody knows last week was not a great week for the stocks. Obviously, it was just on Friday, but massive red week here, followed by an indecision candle here. Honestly, we did see some bullish signs as we so basically looking at the 4-hour chart here, we were down here on Friday, then we gapped up to here, or to here rather, and it was a nice move up. A little bit tricky to be trading this though. Like I was saying last week in the forecast, this week that we just traded was going to be a pretty boring week, and it actually wasn't too bad for trades, but as far as the S&P goes, nothing really went on. If you are bearish on the S&P, and I will, for all the members and people who've been following me for a while, I don't ever short the S&P 500 or any stock indexes for that matter. It's just one of my rules. It's the only pair or market, whatever you want to call. I call everything a pair. I know it's not a Forex pair, but out of all the markets, this is the only one in my rules where I do not short. Right? Or I don't long, right? I long any pair, but this is one of the only ones where I actually have a rule where I do not short. So if you are going to get short at the supply, what I want to see is a reaction off this liquidity again, and then a pullback to the supply zone. And I'd be very aggressive with trade management, and as in looking for like a 1-to-1, or when price goes 1-to-1, move your stop to break even. Many options to be aggressive. That is just what I would prefer if you're going to get in short. Me personally, what I'd be waiting for as a swing trader basically is a break of the supply and the high. Any demand that removes that is going to be a pretty good demand zone in my books. So that is what I'd be waiting for here on the 4-hour time frame. On the 1-hour chart, things were looking really great as we had a nice trend line, and then obviously we blasted right through. But do you guys notice anything about these candles here? it's just really indecisive. Lots of wicks. It's just not great right now. So until we can get some better price action, honestly, on the S&P, it's very tricky to trade. Me personally, I'm just waiting for a breakout and then waiting for a pullback. I'm not just gonna, get in long the breakout. I wait for a breakout to prove to me that we are going to break out, right? If we just go back to the 4-hour time frame here, could I just get in long now and predict a breakout of this? You actually could, and the reason that you could do that is because we have a weekly trend and all the macro trends are up, so it actually does make sense to do that. But it is a higher odds situation to wait for the breakout, prove to us that, we're not going to get it, that there's not excess supply here and we're going to get a massive move down. I want to prove that the supply is removed and that there's a demand zone down below. Then I simply wait for the pullback. And if we get the demand zone and we don't get a pullback, then I simply just don't trade. That is what I'd be doing here on the S&P as a swing trader who prefers to get in long on the S&P 500. All right, moving on to the forecast for the USDJPY. Not a good weekly chart. I show it every time as just a reminder of what we don't really want to be trading in. I mean, we do take trades in the USDJPY, but let's say this is your entry time frame. This is just not great at all. So it's just, what this does is it just represents very sideways price action. Yeah, sure, the momentum is up here, but it is just not looking too great, and there's really no clear trend, and that makes trading conditions very difficult. At least, however, on the daily time frame, we do have a nice daily trend and trend line indicated by this arrow, and we had this demand zone we were waiting for. I talked about this demand zone last week. I said, if you guys want to look for confirmation in the zone, make sure you guys join the team because we will be looking for confirmation as a group in this demand zone. And so far, we have seen a nice wick out of this demand zone. So what that means is we will be looking for H1 confirmation long trades. Now, we did not quite get anything yet. However, we're setting up nicely for it. So let's say, just a quick lesson here. Let's say this is our higher time frame demand. We're going to wait for a pullback down into our demand zone for a confirmation. When we get aggressive pullbacks into our demand zone like this, there's no trend line here. There's no supply zones. It's difficult to get confirmation. So the best case scenario is to see price action like this on the way down, because then we will have trend lines to be removed for confirmation. So we basically have just that. If I sync this in the layout here, and let's say I make it black, and then we go to the 1-hour chart. Basically, we are looking for confirmation now. We contacted our higher time frame area demand, and now we are looking for our confirmation trade. There is a demand zone down below. The issue is I don't have this as removing anything. So this demand zone, I'm going to point out, is a very aggressive entry. It could work out. I do much prefer if we were to break the trend line. That would be much preferred, and then we could get a pullback down that demand zone. It's much preferred. All I'm pointing out this demand zone for it because it appears to be a demand zone. It looks like one. To me, I just want to see what it can accomplish first, and I want to see that trend line removed. If we break the trend line like this, and then let's say we have a demand zone here, I think that would maybe be even better. So I would love a demand zone pullback to there if we can break the trend line. It's possible that the trend line holds and we push down and we break everything, and then you just simply didn't trade. There's pros and cons to confirmation trade. The con would be price takes off without you, you don't get involved. The pro would be we narrow down an entry and it'd be a great setup. So me personally, I want to wait for that trend line to be removed. That's what I'd be waiting for on the 1-hour chart here as we come off of our higher time frame zone. And then it's going to be longs all the way. But for now, again, we want to wait for that trend line to be removed to prove to us, to confirm to us that this higher time frame demand zone is in control, and we're going to take off to the upside. All right, on to the forecast for the GBPUSD. On the weekly time frame here, the higher time frame, we are reacting off of this weekly demand zone again for a second time. I'm a little surprised by that because we did get a previous test, but look how deep the test was as well. It was very, very deep. If we got a test like this, I wouldn't be surprised to see another move off the zone. But nonetheless, we do have a weekly demand that is in control on the GBPUSD. However, on the daily time frame, we did not only create a supply zone, but we actually reacted off of it as well, beautifully. You can actually go back and watch my previous weekly Forex forecast and see this zone called out before time. So That's why I always leave every single forecast on my channel so you guys can go back and check my work. So if we break this supply, in my opinion, that's going to be a very bullish sign, and that is going to tell me that that weekly demand is still holding. Until we can break that, I'm not going to be like extremely bullish on the pound. Yes, you can be bullish for sure. I am more bullish than bearish. I will say that for a few reasons, and I would say probably the main reason is the 4-hour chart. We're going to go to the 1-hour chart first. We have a couple options on this time frame here. We do have this demand zone. It is not my favorite zone whatsoever. Me personally, I'm iffy about it. If you want confirmation in here on like a 5-minute time frame, if you're a day trader, I think that's much higher odds for sure. So we could maybe see a small move off the zone. I'd be aggressive with trade management. It's just kind of making me nervous. It's just basically the zone in the middle of the move. There is a better 4-hour demand zone down below that we're going to be pointing out, but that's just kind of a mediocre zone that I wanted to point out to you. Oh, and before I forget, going back to the 1-hour chart, if we can break this high up here, if we can break that high, we will have a trend line, and then day trading longs on a 5-minute time frame is going to be a very high odds situation with our 1-hour trend line kind of as our guide for our 5-minute entries. So that is something you could be waiting for here this week as well on the pound. If you want to trade a 4-hour demand zone, we have a 4-hour demand zone down below. And what I like about this 4-hour zone is its confirmation coming off the weekly time frame. The only issue with it is that it's a tested weekly zone. So it's not the highest odds situation, but nonetheless, this is a 4-hour demand zone, nice basing, decent move away, broke a trend line. If you're bullish, this would be our higher odds situation. This 4-hour demand zone is much better than that 1-hour demand zone that I was pointing out earlier. So this would be our 4-hour demand zone for a pullback long entry on the GBPUSD. On to the forecast for the USDCAD. We had that weekly demand in control. We have a trend line currently being respected. Things were looking very, very bullish here on the USDCAD, even on the daily time frame. Very nice trend line to the upside. But obviously, if we just look at this as a channel, we were kind of at the top of this channel, expecting to see maybe a move to the downside. So we actually did catch a beautiful 1-hour supply zone trade here. You can see we created liquidity, got that second test of liquidity, pull back into our supply zone, picture perfect trading setup called out beforehand in the daily market breakdown videos for the Diamond members. And some of the members actually caught this trade as well. So it's not just me catching these ones. The members are catching these trades too. And like I said, that is from the daily market breakdown video. If you want to trade alongside myself and the members, join the Diamond membership, where you will have access to the 38-page supply and demand zone PDF, which will be your complete trading guide, the daily market breakdown videos, which are forecasts that I release every single night for the members to trade alongside myself, step-by-step video lessons A to Z, covering everything you need to know on supply and demand trading, the Sunday strategy Zoom session, where members submit homework, and it's an interactive 1-hour call where we go over all of your homework and every trading related question, private access to myself inside of our private Discord group where I answer all of your trading related questions, and finally the Sunday live stream forecast where we break down over 30 markets together. And it's not just me. Here are some of the members and some of their trades they've been taking lately, absolutely killing it. And we also have some amazing reviews from some of the past members sharing their experience within the group. So if you're ready to trade alongside myself and the community, join the Diamond membership today. Links in the description down below. So beautiful move off the supply, like I said. Trends to the downside. We could be seeing more pressure to the downside here. The only thing I'm worried about is maybe, now that I'm looking at this again, we might have just targeted liquidity here, and we could be starting to push back up again, and especially because we have that daily trend to the upside and the weekly trend. So that is why I'm kind of thinking that this might have just been a fake out. If we do continue to pull back, we have a good demand zone down below at 1.39. It's kind of an older zone, so maybe be more aggressive with trade management, but it's a good zone. So if we do see more downward pressure, that's where I think we're going, down to that 1-hour demand zone down below. And let's say we push up, break this supply zone and the high. Any demand zone there is going to be a fantastic trading opportunity. Not only because we removed a supply zone and a high, but because we removed a proven supply zone that we got a trade off of. To me, that means much more than just a random supply zone. So if that's the case, I would be a great potential long entry. And if you want to get just aggressive with it, we have a nice 4-hour trend line here. As long as this trend line's holding, I personally think looking for 15-minute time frame longs is going to be completely fine. We are currently wicking below, but the trend line is still holding. So as long as that's holding, guys, 15-minute time frame longs definitely going to be good. And if we remove this very proven area of supply, any demand zone there is going to be a pretty good setup as well on the USDCAD. On to the forecast for the AUDUSD. This weekly chart is just what I like to call absolute junk. For you guys been watching my forecast for a while, I have been always pointing out this weekly chart, absolutely terrible. But on the daily time frame, we finally got some action. There was nothing going on here, and then all of a sudden, boom, we got supply zones created, demand zones created, and trend lines to the downside. So we do have a daily trend to the downside. However, we wicked beautifully into this area of demand. I've had this daily demand zone on my chart since it was formed mid-September. So make sure you guys go back and confirm that. This is not just hindsight analysis on my channel, guys. It's all beforehand with basically video proof, and everybody knows you cannot edit a YouTube video. So beautiful move off of our daily zone. Nothing crazy, right? But when we pull back into a daily zone, we typically want to be looking for H1 confirmation. And we actually got just that. So if you look on the 1 hour chart here, this was our confirmation trade. You can see we had a nice 1 hour downward trend line. That downward trend line was removed, as well as this opposing area of supply. That left us with the demand zone all the way down at the extreme, and we simply just bought the pullback and caught a beautiful trade off of that 1 hour demand zone. And again, this was called out. This one was actually called out in the daily market breakdown videos, which again are the forecasts that I release for the members every single day throughout the week. Beautiful move off of this 1 hour demand zone. So at this point, this trade has already worked out. I wouldn't be chasing price right now. If you want to short the Aussie, we do have a potential shorting opportunity above. But again, with the daily demand and control, shorting is just going to be lower odds. So what I want to see is a reaction off this resistance liquidity, then a pullback up to this little drop, base drop, hidden area of supply. And I think we could see maybe a small move off of that zone. I'd be aggressive with trade management off of that 1 hour zone. I wouldn't expect to get huge move off of this zone. That's for sure. Down here, we could expect to see a bigger move because we have higher time frame demand and control. But a supply zone like this is more of a quick trade, 1-to-1, 2-to-1, maybe 3-to-1 if you're lucky. So that's what I'd be waiting for a potential short trade on the Aussie. If you want to continue to look for longs, we're kind of in luck. We actually created a support trap down below. I actually didn't realize that until just now, live. So we have new liquidity here with this older 4 hour demand zone. This is a very old zone. This was created back in August. So it is pretty old, but when we create liquidity before it, that makes it much higher odds. So if you want to get in long now, we either need to, one, wait for this supply zone to be removed, and this supply zone is a very good supply zone because we caught a move off that supply as well. This was actually called out beforehand as well. So I just don't have a video to show you guys, but this was also called out as well. And if we remove that supply, it's a very proven supply. So any demand there is going to be a very good demand zone, especially considering our higher time frame in control. So that is option number one for longs. Number two is to simply just get a pullback entry down to that demand zone. And now with liquidity here, there's going to be lots of stop losses. In my opinion, it's a very high odds situation down below on the Aussie US dollar. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the USD Swiss. 4 chart layout here because I just want to show you there's just nothing really going on the weekly or the daily. Yeah, we have a weekly downtrend, but just really choppy price action. So we were pretty much forced to stick to the lower time frames here. And on the 4 hour chart here, kind of whippy price action, but we ended up breaking supply, creating demand, and that was a loss. But then with this loss came a supply level above at 0.805. And it was a great supply zone pullback. Again, called out in the daily market breakdown video beforehand. Actually, sorry, this one was called out in the weekly Forex forecast. My bad. So you can go back and watch last week's forecast. Maybe that's a good reason to subscribe, right? Don't want to miss these trades. So beautiful move off that supply zone. No, I did not catch the entire thing. I wish I did, but I'm always honest with you guys. I did not catch this entire move. Wish I did, but I did not. So at this point, how do we trade the USD Swiss? We have a nice 4 hour downward trend. And as long as that's holding, I personally think looking for shorts on a 15-minute time frame, I think it's going to be a very high odds situation. If we do get a pullback up to this supply zone at 0.799, I think it's a decent 4-hour supply for a potential move to the downside. It's a decent zone. It removed a trend line. It's definitely not bad. And nice move away, nice basing. I think it's a decent potential supply zone setup on the USD Swiss. And if you want to view things on a 1-hour chart, we have a nice 1-hour downward trend line that's currently being respected. We are about to contact it again. But as long as this downward trend line is holding, 5-minute time frame shorts are good as well. So it's looking pretty bearish here on the Swiss. But look, if we break out of this downward trend line, creating a nice demand zone there, it could be a demand zone you could take a stab at. It's definitely an option here, especially with the higher time frames in control. So for now, we definitely want to just be monitoring the 4-hour downward trend line, the 1-hour downward trend line, and that 4-hour supply zone above. Moving on to the forecast for crude oil. So on the weekly time frame here, very, very unfortunate, as we had a nice weekly demand zone here, and that was removed pretty easily. And I was kind of bummed out because I thought this could be a point where we could see, you know, oil turn around and get a nice long trade, and we didn't get that. So it definitely messed with my emotions a bit. But I've been trading for 6 years now, over 6 years, and at this point in my trading career, the psychology aspect doesn't really get to me too much anymore, and it's a big part of your trading. So if you want help with that, make sure to check out my Stoic Trading Psychology podcast. Just did an interview with a real trader from the group, so I think it's good. I think you guys will definitely like it, help you towards building that better trading psychology, which is absolutely key in your trading. So make sure you check out the Stoic Trading Psychology podcast. On this weekly chart here, you can see this purple box. This represents support. We contacted this support level. We have a older demand zone back here. This demand zone was created in 2021. So it's a very old zone, but I like what it accomplished. I like the move away. So I'm not saying that this is where oil is going to turn around completely, guys, but with this support level here, I think what we will be doing is targeting liquidity and then potentially seeing a move off of this weekly zone. I think it could be good for a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 move, and that's on a weekly chart, which means if you're trading like an H4, that 2-to-1, 3-to-1 move could like be a 10-to-1 or a 5-to-1, right? So I think we will continue to see oil. I think we will hesitate now, maybe get a small push up before we end up breaking down to that demand zone where we can then get a move to the upside. So I am expecting oil to continue to go down, not only because of that, but because we have a nice daily downward trend. And I mean, things are just looking really, really weak right now on oil. We have a nice 1-hour downward trend as well. So as long as this 1-hour downward trend line is holding, you could be looking for shorts on a 5-minute time frame targeting that weekly liquidity. So there's tons of profit margin to the downside with this 1-hour downward trend line. It's looking really, really weak on oil. So nice trend line to be gauging our lower time frame shorts, pulling back into a very tested demand zone. So I'm pretty much ignoring this demand. It's not really on my radar. I think maybe it could be used to see a small move, but I'm more interested in this downward trend. As long as this 4-hour downward trend line is holding, 15-minute time frame shorts are going to be good. Let's say we pull up to the trend line, we break the trend line. At that point, we hold off on our 15-minute time frame shorts. We then wait for this base drop supply zone on the 4-hour chart at 61.17 to be hit, and then we can continue to ride the wave down at a short at that supply zone. Even if we break all the way to the upside, we have a very good supply zone sitting right above us here. Kind of an old zone, so I would like to see some liquidity before it, but a couple good supply levels and a nice trend to the downside for shorts. But again, once we contact that weekly demand down below, then we got to switch our bias to the long side after we target that liquidity. All right, moving on to the forecast for Bitcoin. If you guys are on Instagram, make sure you guys follow me over on Instagram at FX Telepath. It'd be much, much appreciated. On the weekly chart here on Bitcoin. And by the way, for Bitcoin, to forecast Bitcoin, it's open 24/7. So it's kind of tricky to forecast. I could point out a 1-hour zone on Bitcoin, and by the time Monday comes around, that 1-hour zone could be blasted through or the trade's already worked out. So take my forecast with a grain of salt here on Bitcoin because it's open 24/7. On the weekly time frame here, we still have 2 days, but we are currently breaking this weekly area demand, and I'm really not surprised because we already got a reaction off of it. So a second test, not really the highest odds situations. So even if we do let's say we don't get a pullback down this demand zone. It's fine. As long as the trend line's holding, longs are going to be really, really good. And it's still looking really bullish right now on Bitcoin. If we do get a deeper pullback, I think this demand zone down below at 97.93, I think that's where we could see price turn around at. It's a fresh zone, almost tested, but it is fresh. Down below, though, is the way better demand zone. Not only because we have liquidity here, but I mean, look at the basing and the move away. Very aggressive. Absolutely love it. 10 times better than this zone. But remember, the best zones can fail and the worst zones can work. I was actually a little surprised that this zone ended up working. So if we break down here, let's say, so this is a great weekly demand zone for a potential long trade as well to look for swing trades in. If we break down here, I think this could be a big turning point for Bitcoin down at that weekly area of demand. So just kind of like to point out potential future trades. On the daily time frame here, we did create daily supply. We blasted through this daily demand, which was a very good demand zone, but with everything that happened last week, I wasn't surprised to see a massive push down. But we do have a daily supply level above. We could see a move off of to the downside at 121.72. If we remove that daily supply with a daily demand here, this daily demand is going to be a great higher time frame zone to look for lower time frame trades in. So that is what we could be waiting for on Bitcoin. If you want to trade counter trend, you can. I don't love doing it, but if you want to trade counter trend, you could wait for the supply zone to be hit, go down to a lower time frame and look for little confirmation trades on like a 1 hour chart inside of that daily supply. But I'd be very aggressive with trade management. This daily zone down below, we almost contacted it. Definitely makes me nervous. So yeah, could we see a small move of the zone? Sure. It just definitely makes me quite nervous. On the 4 hour chart and the 1 hour chart, you can see we have nice trends to the downside. So honestly, it is looking very, very bearish right now on Bitcoin, at least on the lower time frames. So as long as this 4 hour downward trend line's holding here, guys, 15-minute time frame shorts are going to be good. But since the higher time frame trends are looking like this, if we break out of this 4 hour downward trend and we create a 4 hour demand zone there, that's going to be a great dip buying opportunity on Bitcoin that I think we're going to want to hop on. If you guys want access to my full-length forecast, join the Diamond membership where you will have access to that as well as my daily market forecast, the full course supply and demand PDF, and much, much more. Make sure you guys subscribe so you can catch next week's forecast as well. And I always appreciate a like. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.